On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, first of all, what are we wearing? Second of all, is it too early to rank the Central for next season? No, never too early to do stuff like that. So let's do it. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Bo Nix, and with me, as always, Bo Nix. Thank you for joining us on our Tuesday episode, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Always appreciate it. Make sure you're following us on social media, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, LockedOnAvalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and make sure you're subscribed to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do, chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast, like we will do later on when we give the season grade to Mr. Cale Makar. If you're wondering, why are we wearing Bo Nix, the new Denver Broncos Bo Nix jerseys? If you're not watching on YouTube, Kyle is in the orange. I am in the blue. I made good on a bet because when these came out, I was not a fan. I'm still not the biggest fan of these. I think that, cone of vanilla ice cream is more has more pizzazz than these do. But I said, because Kyle is an Auburn fan from Alabama, so he's a big Auburn fan. And I said at the time, if the Broncos draft Bo Nix, who is kind of who I wanted them to get, I thought that'd be a good pickup for them. I said, I will go get that new jersey, which I really don't like all that much. And we all know what happened. The Denver Broncos did draft Bo Nix. So here we are. I said, out of the three, I liked the blue one the best. You have the orange one. I don't know. I'm still not sold, man. I like, maybe they'll look good in full uniform, the full team out there with the helmets and pads and stuff like that. But I'm still just, I can't figure out how you love these and the Utah Hockey Club, you don't like those. I still can't for the life of me figure that out.
Maybe because it is tugging on my Auburn heartstrings. This is kind of, getting there. But I mean, they could have done a lot worse. I mean, yes, I'm nostalgic for the old Broncos look, but I mean, this at least has a little bit of flair to it. And it's got the devil's in the details, baby.
I guess. I don't know. Well, I mean, it'll grow on me over time, but they didn't hit me like the ones that they just got rid of when those came out in the late 90s. Immediately loved those right away. Not that I wouldn't want to go back to the old Denver D. That'd be the best, but this is what we have. It's for my team, so we'll see where it goes. What we're going to talk about today, obviously, is Colorado Avalanche hockey, and we still had some questions that we wanted to get to, kind of carrying over from yesterday's episode. And one of the ones that we got, sir, was where do we think that the Avalanche will rank in the standings for next year? Now we'll just do the Central. I don't want to get into the league as a whole because it's very difficult to do this right now because we haven't had a draft. We haven't had free agency. We haven't had trades. We haven't had people moving around. So it's tough to really look at rosters as they are right now and say, like, that's what it's going to be heading into next year. But, based on the players that are signed, based on the guys who we think might be coming back for the teams in the Central, what do you think? Do you think it's going to be a kind of a repeat from last year with, the Avs, the Stars, and Winnipeg kind of duking it out? Or do you think there's some of those teams that were on the middle to bottom that are ready to take that next leap into a playoff spot?
All right, don't start throwing things at me. Don't come after me with torches and pitchforks. But I do feel like right now, as the league sits, I feel like Dallas is your favorite in the Central going into next year.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of team construction, what they can do with the cap, I think they're a little bit more favorable. But for the Avalanche, I feel like they will leapfrog their position where they finish up. I think they will have a better record than the Winnipeg Jets. I feel like Winnipeg, got hot at the right time. I don't know if that makeup is sustainable and how many times can they keep hitting their head against the wall before they either make a change or square one. And Hellebuck's contract's coming up. That's interesting. But I
Well,
don't see Chicago at the bottom anymore either.
But didn't Hellebuck re-up?
I don't know if he
Yeah. I thought him and Scheifele both re-upped kind of around like the same time. Hellebuck did, yeah, man. He's good.
Well,
he's good until 2030, 31.
Well,
So he's not going anywhere.
And then that's the thing. Like, okay, then what else does Winnipeg do?
In terms of like signing guys?
Yes. What is Winnipeg's identity other than Connor Hellebuck? Like I understand
Depth. They have depth. They have size. Like that's their game. Is they have some stars. Obviously, Hellebuck is a star. Scheifele is. Kyle Connor is incredibly underrated in my opinion. He is so good and doesn't get the notoriety, and that is simply from playing in Winnipeg. And I'm not trying to knock Winnipeg. If he played in a major market, he would be a superstar. And Scheifele is good. Let me see. I'm going down there. Like, but and that's the thing. Like they play a roll out all the lines style, and you look at who they have signed. They have the majority of the guys signed on their team. So what you got last year is what you're going to get next year, and that's a tough team to go up against the regular season. Now, after what happened in the postseason, if they make it into the postseason next year, people are going to have that you fell flat last year. So let's see what you got. But they'll be right there. I don't think that they're going anywhere.
I'm just like every time I look at Winnipeg, they're a good team. Yes, they'd have been a great team about a decade ago. And I just feel like the league is shifting a little bit. Like you see the West representative is the best player in the league in Connor McDavid and a supporting cast. And then you see the Avalanche, like stars, all stars, Hall of Famers eventually, and a good supporting cast. Like Winnipeg is like the Western Conference version of maybe like the Rangers and the Hurricanes. Like it's a bunch of good guys that you could keep rolling out depth wise, but what does that produce anybody? Lately?
How far does that get you in the playoffs?
Exactly.
Right. And you could look at a team like Florida right now and say, well, it's working for them. And that's a team I kind of wanted to compare them to, because the last year, we all maybe forgot a little bit exactly not how Florida made it to the Stanley Cup, how Florida made it into the playoffs.
True.
They were left for dead, and they needed a lot of help from teams that were really bad, and they got it. And they made it into the playoffs based on that, and then went on an incredible run. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, coming into this season, they needed all that help to get into the playoffs. Are they really that good of a team? Are they still that team that is like hovering like a borderline playoff team? And they made some good moves, very subtle ones, and they even upped their game more. And I kind of feel like maybe that's Winnipeg. Maybe Winnipeg just needed a year to get into the playoffs, get their feet wet, because they weren't expected to do what they did this past year. They were expected to be better. But I think a lot of people were saying it was a two-headed race between Dallas and Colorado, and then the other spots are between everybody else in the division. And Winnipeg said, nope, we're throwing our hat into that ring, and it's a three-headed monster. And I think that's, you'd have to, just going off last year, I think you have to assume that should repeat between Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado. Now, is there any like of the lower teams that you think can make the next up? Nashville had a great ending to the season, which got them into the playoffs. That was a run that you just can't expect that to happen. They need to be more consistent over the duration of a season. Can they be that team? I don't know. I mean, there's talk of them trading UC Saros, so that doesn't make them better. Depending on what the return is. Chicago, I think Chicago, depending on what they do in the off season, because they have the money and the moves to make a couple moves to really improve them.
Yeah.
Enough to go from bottom of the barrel to playoff. I don't think so. That's a big jump. Not a lot of teams can do that. I know the Avalanche did it, but it doesn't happen a lot. So that's why it's kind of a little bit tough to answer this now, because you have to play wait and see with teams like Chicago, because if they can make some pretty impressive moves, sure, they can improve. They definitely can improve. So I'd like to see where they go.
See, and like I think it's bold enough. I would go out on a limb and say Chicago will jump possibly Minnesota and St. Louis with the ability that they have money-wise, the amount of draft picks they have. Like they can really improve this team where Minnesota can't. They're literally just dead in the water.
Yeah.
And St. Louis really has no traction going on there, and they're losing faith in Jordan Bennington, which that's great to see, but it doesn't take much for Chicago to make a couple moves and leapfrog both of those teams.
And the other team obviously is, Utah. And they were improved last year in Arizona. And they kind of went how I thought it was going to go. They started off the season not too bad, but they just haven't been in the mix for so long. They don't know how to play late in the season when the games really matter. So I thought last year was like a good footing for them to maybe take another step forward. And now you're moving around to a completely different city. How much is that going to play into this whole thing for that? We don't know. Maybe it invigorates them because now they're playing in front of bigger crowds, and they're playing in front of crowds that are rooting for them rather than, 2,000 of the 3,000 people that are at Arizona State are rooting for the other team.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see a good jump from them in the beginning of the season. Can they sustain it? So I think the Central will be a good division. I think there's obviously some questions, but I think at the end of the day, I think it's the three teams that made it last year make it again. And I think who maybe gives them a push. I don't know. Like, I think Nashville can be there. Maybe it's tough. It's just tough to say because we don't. I mean, we'll revisit this before the season starts and we're going to do predictions and stuff like that. But you have to see like kind of what those teams make, because that's where teams who were doing poorly last year, they usually have the means to make some moves.
Yeah.
We'll see what those teams in the division do. If they make the right ones, maybe they make a little bit of a push and a little bit of an increase in the standings. So,
and you get year 2 of Connor Bedard.
And the improvement from him too, you have to feel is going to happen too. So, it'll be interesting to see. So, all right, let's get our first break in here, and when we come back, we had a pretty fun question about where we would want, what arenas have we been to, and what arenas do we want to go to next if we could to see an NHL game. So we'll do that after this. All right, let's hear from FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Is the NBA game going on as we speak, Kyle?
It is indeed.
And I'm just checking the score right now, and it looks like Boston's up by 20 or 18, and it's almost halftime. So
is up by 18, going for title 18.
Is it? Ooh, there you go. So this one's probably over. I know it's only halftime and 18 points, but it's in Boston, so I'm sure that thing's going to get wrapped up. And then you can get $200 that you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. And visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so we've been to some arenas and seen some NHL games, and we had a question of like where we've been and where we would like to go. So I had to go through and kind of remember the ones that I've been to, and I've been to a total of 7, which surprised me. I never have kept track of this. But just for me, I've been to Ball, I've been to MSG, I've been to TD Garden, Prudential, USB, PNC in Carolina, and crypto.com, but I was there when it was the Staples Center. So that's 7. Like I didn't think I've been to that many, which, okay, that's not bad. That's not bad to get under my belt. But which ones have you been to?
See, and growing up in Alabama, I was at the disadvantage of not really engaging in NHL markets. So my first one was not too long ago in Prudential Center at the Rock. And then it was the Devils game and then the Islanders game. Those are my 2 NHL arenas I've been to, but I've spent a lot of time in minor league hockey arenas my entire life.
Yeah. And I gotta say, Prudential Center is a nice arena.
Oh, I love it.
That is a great, fun arena. And same thing with USB, where the Islanders play. I mean, that's brand new. Everything in there is state of the art, obviously. But where would I want to go that I haven't been? I think if you're a hockey fan and you haven't been to where the Toronto Maple Leafs play,
Mm.
at Scotiabank, it's like you don't you like have to do that? Isn't that like a Yankee Stadium or Fenway Park type of like environment that you need to be around?
Yeah, I think that would be like that
Even
would
if you
be up
don't
there.
like the team, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Forget about all that stuff, but you kind of have to go there, do you not?
Just and I honestly like a playoff game where you could take in that outdoor environment where they have that outdoor watch party.
Mhm.
Every time I see like the Maple Leafs doing that outdoor watch party with just a sea of blue and white, I kind of
Yeah.
want to be in that.
Yeah. So there, and the other one that I really want to go to is the Saddle Dome. And I know that's a
Interesting.
little dated and it's been around for a while. And isn't there talk of them even moving on from it and
I think so.
having building a new arena? If they do, I would just build the same exact style. How that thing looks is just awesome. That's what I love about arenas that have like you look at it and you know exactly what it is. And the Saddle Dome is that. And I know it's outdated, but you hear about the walkways up that are just touching the arena ceiling, like, and if you don't like heights, don't go there. I that'd be a fun one to go to in Calgary.
Yeah, like for me, easily number one would be ball. I got to go 2
Never been there
days just to go there and cry tears of reverence and
yet.
just
Yeah,
go there and then enjoy the game. I really want to go to Seattle. I want to see.
that's a good one. Yeah,
I want to see that the whole walk-in street level right down to the arena. I want to see that whole vibe. I think that's an incredible vibe they got going on there.
yep.
And I kind of want to go to TD Garden to experience a Bruins game.
That's fun. Bruins fans can be rough, but they're it was weird. The game I saw there was Bruins and Rangers game, and I was thinking they were just going to be brutal to the Rangers fans, and they really weren't. Like I think they were more and the Bruins won, so I think that helped. But no, it's Boston's a great city. It's a lot of fun in Boston. So, and if you can make your way over to Fenway too, definitely go see a baseball game at Fenway because they're classic. So, and I won't because I just can't stand the team, but it does look like a fun time in Vegas to see a Vegas game. And I just couldn't enjoy it. I would have to go and not see them play the Avalanche because I would want the Avalanche to win like it was the Stanley Cup. And I wouldn't be able to enjoy the game. But everything you hear about the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas is like it is a time, which is understandable. It's Vegas, but I just I could not bring myself to do that. I don't know.
And it's funny you mentioned Vegas as a place you don't want to see Vegas play. I have that same feeling. I would rather go watch like a college game.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to go see a game in Excel Center in Minnesota.
I wouldn't mind that either, man. I really wouldn't. I think that'd be a good one.
I just can't go.
Yeah.
I can't be in the sea of Christmas tree sweaters and Minnesota love. But
Yeah,
I think that arena and how they observe the history of the game and just all of that, I think that's a really cool touch. And I really want to experience that, but just not in the context of the Wild.
and another kind of team in that realm, division rival, stuff like that, is Nashville. Like I've heard those games are wild, inside and out of the arena when it's not flooded, obviously. But, hey.
I grew up close to there. I had the opportunity. Those fans are something
great. Yeah, but again, it seems like a time. So
there's
I don't know. I have a friend of mine that wants to do this. Just go to one or two like every year. I don't know where he's at, but I don't know. Maybe in my retirement age, and I have nothing else to do. Maybe that's when I'll kick it into high gear and go around.
You know what? Finish it out. If you had the DeLorean, what's a classic one? Because I would do the Hartford Mall to watch the Whalers in the
That
mall.
would be a good one.
McNichols in that
McNichols,
concrete.
but I heard McNichols was terrible.
Yeah, the concrete jungle.
Oh my god, I feel like the sightlines were terrible. If you're going to Hartford, why not go to Quebec?
Oh yeah,
and go where the Nordiques played. So you just do those old teams. Hey,
yeah.
Whatever arena the Thrashers played at.
Oh no, you
Go
don't
there.
It doesn't
You'd
exist
have your
anymore.
pick of seats. You'd sit anywhere you want for like $3.
I think College Football Hall of Fame is over there now.
Oh, that's funny. All right, so we'll get our last break. We still have some more questions to do. Hey, like we said, it's the off season. We can spread these out over there because we had some good ones. And we have one on books. Which books? But there's the way he asked it is interesting. So that'll be for tomorrow. But for the rest of today, we also didn't get to who would teach us a slap shot. We got to hold on to that one too. So we got to do that one. There's so much to get to. All right. But what we're going to finish up today with is Cale Makar and his season grade. So we'll do that right after this. All right, Cale Makar, we got him. You don't, and sucks to be you. And so, another great year for Makar, but it's funny because some people just feel like it wasn't his best. And while they still wanted to give him a good grade, through like the comments that we were getting were, good, but not Cale Makar good. And we'll get into that. So if you're watching over on YouTube, there is your grades, really A's across the board. I gave him an A-. Everybody else gave him an A. So percentage-wise, YouTube was 74%, Twitter X 65%, Instagram 73%, and Threads was 70%. So A's across the board, technically. I mean, you can't, what are we going to ding him for? If he's not an A+, and I gave him the A-, so I'll get to him and my thoughts in a minute. But what's your take on Cale Makar's season?
This might be the most fascinating grade that we give out all year long, because you could see like these flat A's and everybody having that little bit of hesitation. This was Cale Makar's best year points-wise. And that's wonderful, majestic. Way to go, Cale Makar. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room. This was the first year that Cale Makar looked human when it came to hockey fundamentals. There was a lot of turnovers, sloppy passes. It just and we got spoiled early in this man's career with those like shareable goals, those incredible moves, those highlights that play in every NHL commercial. There was not a lot of those for Cale Makar this year, and it was more of a pedestrian type highlight season. But
okay.
No,
I thought you were going to say pedestrian
no.
season. Okay, highlight season.
Like you can't say, "Oh, look at how crazy this kid is." Look, no, it was points wise. He did exactly more than he ever has. The health issue was there. The fundamentals were a little weird, but he's still incredible.
Yeah,
and I think it's hard to judge like all other 31 teams, 32 teams, 33 teams, whatever the league expands out to be. They would do anything to have a player of Cale Makar's caliber.
Sure.
Yet when we're tasked with the job of grading Cale Makar on his last season, we're like, oh, he's great. He's wonderful. Hall of Famer. I just, it's a flat A. Like you would have expected a little bit more cleaner, but I mean, we're expecting like that's still above everyone else. That's 1% of the league. He's incredible.
Yeah, no, and this season, like we hold him to a higher standard.
Yeah,
right. And he holds himself to a high standard. So I don't want to grade him based on that, just based on what we expect him to do. We have to grade him on what he did. Yes, offensively was his best season points wise as an output. I think where we saw, I don't want to say regression, but just a struggle was defensively.
Yeah.
And you did see some defensive lapses. It wasn't just him. It was across the board. It was Devon Taves, and we'll get to him obviously when we get to T. But you can say the same thing for him. Like they struggled defensively this year to really put it together. There were moments where it seemed like, how many times this year, Kyle, we say like, oh, it seems like they're turning the corner as a team and playing well in all three zones and offensively, defensively, but like, and then you'd get a stretch of games where it just would go back to struggling again in one particular area. He did. He struggled defensively this year. Had his moments where he was great. Had his moments where you were like, "What are you doing? Bad positioning. Just not putting a body on a guy. Whatever." When you talk about how he had like some turnovers and things like that, I'm not trying to make an excuse for him on this, but he probably handles the puck more than anybody else on the team, including Nathan MacKinnon. So when you are the primary puck holder, you have so many more opportunities to make a mistake, turn the puck over, what have you. So I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, because it's like, yeah, he's handling the puck all the time. They ask him to do so. He's playing so many minutes. You're going to make mistakes. So he needs to be, that much more perfect when he has the puck than, say, Andrew Cogliano or even Ross Colton, if you want to, you know what I mean? Like everybody. So he gets a little bit of a pass from me there, but because he's just so otherworldly, you don't expect him to make a mistake ever. But this is a sport of hockey where mistakes are all over the map, and he's not immune to them. So I'm not so much frustrated with that aspect. I think I want to see him improve defensively. We've seen that he can be a great defender, and he is. I don't know what it was this year, and people want to say like, maybe there was an injury. If the Avalanche aren't coming out and saying like he had something, I don't think anything was there, because we got it from Chris McFarland in the postseason press conference, where he listed, I think, like 2 or 3 guys that said, Middlestat had an injury, Lehkonen had an injury. I think that was it. Maybe there was just the 2 guys. He would have put Cale Makar in there and just said like, yeah, he's dealing with something and it's not a big deal. But he didn't. He didn't say anything about Mikko either. So I don't think there really was an injury there. I think it's just, this is a little bit of the ebb and flow of, guys are now wanting to catch up to Cale Makar, and they have tape on him now where they know what he does. They try to anyway, know what he does, but he's always a mystery of where he's going to be, what he's going to do. He's that good. But I think you're going to see the things where he struggled with this last year. He is a, perfectionist. And he is going to look at every single game, probably every single shift that he played last year, and figure out the little nuances that he needs to fix so he doesn't make that tiny little mistake. And those, I think, are going to get corrected for next year. And they're not even that big in my eyes. It's not even that big of a deal. And he's that good. All-star again, up for the Norris Trophy again. He's one of a kind.
Yeah, and it's one of those that you got to kind of put things in perspective. Like Cale Makar, generational talent, not just an incredible talent, great amongst his peers. Like he's often compared to Bobby Orr. He's compared to Hall of Famers. And when he came into the league in 1920, and not 1920, 2019, 2020, when he came in, the Avalanche were finding their identity and their cohesion at that point. And Cale Makar was the gasoline on that fire and helped them propel themselves to the next level and really solidified the identity of the quote unquote trademark rights reserved Colorado Avalanche. And this was the first year, like the beginning of the year, that the team had no cohesion, no identity. And still, honestly, at the end of the year, I don't think they ever found that. And Cale Makar had to find it was the first resistance year. Even with all the injuries they suffered last year, they still found a way to stick to Avalanche hockey and win games and push through. This year, nothing was going right. And even on Cale Makar, when his mistakes were so prevalent, we often were kind of just alluding to, is there an injury here? Is there something going on? Is there a concussion lingering? What is going on? Because this is uncharacteristic. But that was top to bottom. Everybody suffered that up until the All-Star break. Nobody finding their game, really, other than Nathan MacKinnon, who had that streak going. Nobody looked characteristic for what they have always been in an Avalanche sweater.
Yeah, that's true. Over on subtext, we had some people chime in here. Mark says 100 exclamation point A plus. So I think we know who Mark's favorite player is on the Colorado Avalanche. Probably has every single jersey, and rightfully so. Avs fan forever says this is hard one for me since I know he was grinding hard most of the time, but I have to go with a solid B plus. He was quiet for more games than McKinnon, so I can't quite give him the A. I don't think he was really. I mean, well, I mean, I guess you could say he was quiet for here. I mean, every player is going to be quiet every once in a while, but quiet what? Quiet offensively because he had his highest production points wise. Quiet defensively, sure, I can grant you that.
Yeah, he only had 21 goals, and he didn't have the big like lay you out hit or incredible like puck possession coast to coast little whoop-de-doo move to put it in.
When you said he didn't have like those highlight highlight reel or enough of them was pedestrian, the highlight reel department, he did, but they didn't end in goals.
Yeah.
And that's where like that's how he really got on the map, was like he was making these incredible moves that were finished with the puck in the back of the net. Like he was still dancing around guys, skating around guys, blowing past guys. He was doing that all season long. But then he'd come in and the puck would sail or to get tipped or something would happen and it's tough. It's tough to make those moves. And then, at the end of it, pot the goal. But I think that's where it was, maybe we felt like his oh my God moments were not on display. When they just didn't end with goals often.
And last year he was that guy that you looked to when everything was going wrong. He usually would turn things around, usually off a face-off, and get a slap shot goal just with that cool, calm authority. And that wasn't there. That finishing ability just wasn't there 100% like it was the year before. And I feel like that's why everybody feels like he wasn't as prevalent, because that little finishing touch just wasn't there.
Yeah. Easton says, I think if you set a career high in points, you have to at least be in the A range. We all have such high expectations for Cale, and we all think there is even more to give. I'd give him an A minus. But at what point do we feel like he like, I don't want to do this every year where we're like, he's got more. He's like, I think like we know how good he is. Like, what else can he do? I mean, you can always increase your point output. But is that going to make us feel like, he's even better than he was before? I don't know. I still feel like he's already there. I feel like and he's just going to keep improving on numbers and overall stats. I don't feel like he's learning the game better. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like he's already as great as he. I should say this: as great he is right now, he's just going to continue that.
Yeah. And if he cleaned up the defensive woes that he had this year, we would be talking about McKinnon, Makar, and we would be probably doing both their grades together with 100,000 pluses next to both names because we couldn't get over it. But this was one weakness that we saw, but it was still overall one of the best defensive performances in the league this year.
Except for the Norris. So we can't come down on too hard. And finally, Katie says, compared to the NHL as a whole, Makar will always be an A plus. But if I compared him to himself, then I would say an A minus. I think that's a very good way to put it.
That's awesome.
Obviously, he broke some records and he had a good season, but defense as a whole definitely struggled this year. And as the defensive leader of the group, I had to put some of that on him. I think that's very well said.
Yep.
I think that's perfectly said. For anybody else, if anybody else on other teams were grading Cale Makar, they'd probably be giving him an A plus right now. But because we watch him all the time, the expectation is what it is. And like she said, comparing him to Cale Makar, ding him a tiny bit, and A minus. I'm in agreement with her there. I think that's a good comment. Good comment.
Way to go, Katie. That was well said.
Very good. So, all right. That is pretty much going to wrap it up for today's episode. We'll be back tomorrow. And then for Thursday, I did a special crossover with Hattie Kalakash, who is from Locked On NHL Prospects. And he is our draft and prospect guru. So I talked with him. That will be for Thursday's episode. So if you're clamoring for the draft and prospects, great conversation that I had with Hattie. So that will be for Thursday's episode. And then tomorrow we got to do the shot thing. We'll do that. And then there's other questions that we still have to get to because that's what we do in the off season. So join Subtext if you want some questions asked. Links in the show notes below. Other than that, that's going to wrap today up. So thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. And he is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli, and this is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Let's ride.
No, let's bow. Let's bow.